Good morning, everybody. I'm Peg Martin, and I'm an alcoholic. And through the grace of God and fellowship of people like you and sponsorship, I've been sober since February the 4th, 1964, and for that I'm very grateful. I want to thank the committee for asking us to come this year and for being so kind to us and having us to this beautiful part of the world. Thanks for the fruit. There's a little bouquet of flowers in our room. They just really did everything they could to make us feel welcome. And I do. And I appreciate that. I've had a really good time. I was thinking this morning, and happy Valentine's Day, everybody. I was thinking this morning when I was sitting up here that every time I come to a meeting, as Clancy was talking about last night and Dick talked about yesterday, when I come to a meeting, at a certain point because we have certain formats, there are different formats in different parts of the country, and some are very loose, and some just throw the meeting open. They don't, as far as I'm concerned, resemble AA. They're more like maybe BB or something, but they sort of throw it open. I am more used to a little bit more structured environment and that kind of thing. And at a certain point, let's say that the preamble is read and then the steps are read, and about halfway through the steps, almost involuntarily, I take a deep breath and just relax. I mean, it's an extraordinary event. It's almost autonomic. It's almost just something I do because it's there. I don't know. I just do it. And I think what it is that I am slowing down and I am letting go and I am giving myself over to the meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. And in a way, it's a sort of an automatic step 1, 2, and 3. I can't, God can, I think I'll let him. I don't know, it isn't in my head that that's what I do, but that's how it feels. Because when I take that deep breath and I let go of that breath, I just feel calmer and more peaceful and less stressful and more ready to listen to the meeting and to and be in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. It is a safe refuge for me. I know that no matter if I come to the meeting wounded, because as I said yesterday, I'm a person of great passions, I just have a lot of character defects, and I just, when I come to AA, I sometimes come deeply wounded or deeply upset or something, and when I take that breath and I let go, somehow or another, it's like exhaling that particular passion or emotion or resentment or whatever. I was talking to somebody this morning, and I was saying, well, let's see if her resentment gets her to the meeting, and it did. I won't tell you who it is. It's not fair. But it's just, when I enter the doors of Alcoholics Anonymous, it's as though I let go of that, and I give myself over to recovery. And how very nice that is. I mentioned yesterday that one of the people that I sponsor and have sponsored for a great many years has a very serious condition. It was a cancer that metastasized into both lungs, and she's taking Taxol, and all her hair fell out. And we have a plan at the women's meeting this Thursday. We're all going to wear hats, just as a show of support, if nothing else. And if she were given the option, and I've thought about this many times, there was a very seriously ill little boy in our group. He was a son of one of our people. If Joan were given the option with this disease of coming to 4 or 5 meetings a week and of sitting in a meeting and being able to draw a deep breath and exhaling those character defects, if you will, that cause us to be upset. If she were given that choice, and if she were told, if you do this on a continuous basis, week after week, day after day, month after month, year after year, you will be able to keep your disease at bay. You will be able to function as though you did not have that. Do you think that she would take that option? And yet we will come up with the damnedest excuses not to recognize the grace of God. We will come up with the damnedest reasons to do it ourselves. And that's alcoholism. And as Clancy so eloquently put last night, you know, it's I don't know why it is that we do that. I don't know why. I just know that that's part of my disease. That my disease tells me things that are not good for me. You know, I'm always thinking about, every time I get this really great, huge, enormous urge to do something, it's bad for me. I know it is. You know, I mean, I know it is. If I don't want to do something, it's good for me. It really is. You know, if I go to exercise twice a week, I'm 60 years old. I don't like exercising. I have never liked exercising. Fortunately, I don't have to like exercising. I like walking. I like walking, but I don't like jumping, and I don't like lifting weights. I think it's barbaric. Especially when they go over your head, you know, like this with that. I just think it's like fascism or something, you know. This woman's up there, but I go because it's good for me. I don't want to do it, but I do it, and as a result of that, I'm very proud because I can lift my suitcase up into the upper bin. I could not do that before, you know, before I did that. So the things I think are bad for me are good for me, and the things I think are good for me are bad for me. And that's just the way it's been. And if I just kind of go, oh, well, you know, oh, well, and do the opposite of what I think I should do, I'm fine. And that's kind of nuts. But then that's me. You know, I mean, I'm not exactly nuts, but I'm not exactly rap-tight either. And I recognize that. And I'm harmless. Matter of fact, I'm useful. And I don't care. You know, I have a good time. And as long as I stay, I'm kind of like, I like to think of myself as an alcoholic. I've always liked to think that I want to be free. You know, that's what I always said, you know. I just want to be free. I want to do what I want to do. I want to be free. And I'm like, really, I always wanted to think of myself as a sparrow. You know, flap, 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 you know. And I love the fact, think about this. This is one of those useless things that I think about that sometimes keep me awake. Because, you know, it's like, as an alcoholic, I'm a binge thinker. You know, I get to thinking about something. And it's involuntary. I can't help it. I just think about it, and then I try not to think about it, and I think about it harder. You know, I think. I got to thinking one day about wild birds. How do they miss the trees? Sometimes they're real close together, these branches and things, and they never seem to lose feathers or anything. They just like zip through, and I've always thought, well, that's what I want to be. Because I want to be a bird that can flip through those trees like that and never lose a wing or feathers or anything. But actually what I am is I'm a canary. I'm a kind of canary. I'm a canary because when I have this beautiful golden cage, which is almost invisible, because if I have the right attitude. If I have the right attitude, this golden cage of the 36 principles, the 36 different tenets of Alcoholics Anonymous and all of the other things, the meetings and sponsorship and so forth, forms this protective golden cage with very thin little wires. And here I'm, this little canary, and as long as I'm within this structure, this framework, I just sing, and I just real yella, and I can flap my little rings and just have the best time, and I'm safe. 'Cause of and by myself, I'd be the sparrow, like in the cartoons, like that roadrunner or the woodpecker that flies straight into the tree, just like that, because that's what I did. And they always have the bent beaks, the funny-looking bent beaks, and that'd be me, because liberty verging on license. I don't ever do things in any kind of moderation, because moderation is boring. Excess is exciting. To me, that's it, and it's always been, because, of course, what? I'm a person of these passions. So AA's for me. But that was the last thing I wanted to do. Absolutely the last thing in my mind was that, and turns out to be the greatest thing I've ever done. And I've done a lot of things in my life, but the greatest thing I've ever done is turn myself in to the golden structure of Alcoholics Anonymous. Best thing I ever did. But it's the last thing I ever wanted to do. Now, isn't that a prescription for surrender? It certainly is in my book. And another thing is this. I did not surrender. I don't surrender. I hardly ever surrender today, because I have a linebacker's mentality. I take no prisoners. I kill them. Clancy's a nice guy. Frank is not. Frank and I would have made a good commando team. Because Dick is a steady, sort of solid character, a little bit predictable sometimes, but, but he's got to be, for God's sake, living with me. And we complement each other. But it's like I'm just not, I have a linebacker's mentality. I will beat on it, I'll pummel it, I'll stomp on it, and then I'll say, well, I'll do it your way. For a little while. I basically comply. What I do? I comply until they can be beaten into a state of reasonableness. Whatever the situation is, whether it be one of my personal favorites, the telephone company. I love fighting with institutions. Completely useless, but I love it. Whether it be getting direct TV, whether it be whatever it is, that's the way I do it. What happened to me when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous at the age of 25, drinking a quart of vodka a day, was completely different. It was not a surrender that I had. It was a surrender I experienced. I was surrendered. I was surrendered. I experienced surrender. Because I'll tell you what, as long as I had a better idea, as long as I was not out of ideas, as long as I thought that I had a plan, even if it was a dumb plan, I was going to follow my plan eventually. And I got to Alcoholics Anonymous a little over 35 years ago. And let me describe to you how I was when I arrived at AA, which was the last place, remember, I wanted to go. I hope I can describe this to you. First of all of my bodily functions had ceased. Now, I was within days of death. There is no doubt. I could not cry, not because I was not sad or felt sorry for myself, but because I had no tears. I had no tears. There was not enough liquid left in me to urinate. I had not been able to evacuate anything from my body for days and days. My skin had a rash all over it. My fingernails were ridged, rippled, and were falling out at the roots. My hair had died. It died months before this. And there were great patches of bald all over my head. I could not feel the tips of my fingers. My toes were completely out of the question. I had no feeling. I shuffled. I could not get enough spit in my mouth to swallow. I was within days of dying from complete poisoning. This is how I came. And if that was the case, if that was the condition of my body, cracks in my lips, spider veins through my face, my liver was out to here. I was 25 years old. If that was the condition of my body, consider what my mind was like. Consider what the actual physical condition of my brain was like. It's strange and wonderful today, but think what it was then. There are all these little, neurons in your brain, billions of them, billions of neurons. And these neurons have these little, arms, like this, and that I don't know what they're called. We'll have to ask Eric. But they're little things that flap like this, and where they sort of tickle one another. And in tickling one another like this, they create an electricity. And they're all in little sacs of fluid. And they're tickling each other, and they do this electricity, and it causes our brain to, like that. And it's like an electrical motor, and it's fueled by your heart's pumping like this, and it's sending all this stuff up, and the brain's causing the electrical activity, and we know where we park the car. We know, we know when we pick up something what we're going to do with it and stuff like that. And these little things do all of this. Well, when we drink, these little sacs they don't like it. They don't like alcohol. They don't like it at all. But they don't like it especially when there's an overdose of alcohol, because what happens then is they get this little thing in the sacs of fluid, and these little arms pull back at the synapses. Instead of tickling one another, they go eek, eek, eek. And they literally do that. I mean, physically, that's actually what they do. They don't actually go eek, but they do. They pull back from them like this, and they go eek, eek, eek. And this spark, which was supposed to jump across and then travel through over here and, or go wherever it goes like that. And it's like bacon, and so you got billions of these, and they're all going eek, eek. like this, crying, and you get burned out. You get burnt brain, basically, and then they kind of shrivel up and die. Well, if you think how bright I would have been. Or you would have been. But I killed off so many brain cells, with this stupid... And then I couldn't remember who I was with. I couldn't remember to put one foot in front of the other. I couldn't even hardly remember to breathe. And that, much less have a single better idea. Now, I was one of these kids who was, tested when I was young, and I had this really high IQ. Now, in those days, they just called us precocious brats, basically. Today, they call us gifted. I like that so much better, gifted children. Would have killed me, probably, had I been known as gifted. But I was just, I was supposed to do something with this. And here I was at 25 years old with a fried brain and a bent body and unable to make any kind of decisions. And I was delivered, I was surrendered because I simply could not think my way out of this situation. I simply could not do it anymore. I don't know if you can think back on your last experience with drinking, but what I remember was this. I was so tired. I was so tired. I was so bone weary. Just weary. And just living in a kind of a gray life, in a kind of a fogged condition that was unbelievable. And so I really was surrendered. And I'll tell you, had I known 25 years before that I was going to be delivered to Alcoholics Anonymous, I wouldn't have believed you. Because I grew up in a nice family. My grandfather was an alcoholic, but we just thought he was an old Ozark coot. He lived down at the Lake of the Ozarks for years, and he drove erratically, and the way he parked the car, it was at the top of the hill, he'd run into a tree. And we'd know Grandpa was home. He'd run into a tree, and Grandma would say, "There's Grandpa." He kept a bottle under the bathtub in the bathroom in this house that he built there on the Lake of the Ozarks. And he drank, and he drank until he died. That's the only alcoholic that I know of, except my aunt, Dorothy, who was my mother's sister, and she died in an alcoholic convulsion. She was in her early 50s. And I was days from that. And I was 25. I was the sort of kid that was a setup for being an alcoholic. I had this linebacker mentality. I did not like people to tell me no. I would do anything that I could to get my way. I have to laugh at my granddaughter now because her two first words were no and mine. That's hers. And you can just see it. You can see it in the eyes. She's thinking, what can I do to get what I want? And I tell you, and with Grandma and Grandpa, it doesn't take a lot, because we'll do whatever she wants. Which is why she probably didn't have to talk until she was 2, because she just got everybody to do what she wanted by yelling and pointing. It's my kind of girl. And I remember this, and some of the women will appreciate this. There was a guy in my 6th grade class. I was in charge. I was always in charge. If I cannot. It's not like I really want to lead. I simply can't follow. I don't think I set myself up to lead, but I simply can't follow because I don't think you're going in the right direction. You know what I'm saying? So I'm in charge of getting this money for the Berlin Candy Lift. Funny thing, years later in AA, I was down in Texas, and a guy comes up to me after the meeting. He said, I was one of the pilots that flew the planes that took those candy bars to Berlin. And he was in AA. That's neat. Of course, we didn't have any idea. He was old by then. Well, I am too, actually, but middle-aged. But anyway, well, I am, because my father's almost 90, so, so I'm kind of middle-aged. Hope. Is that alcoholic rationalization? Or I just happened to think of that. Anyway, so I said, listen, bring in your money tomorrow, because we're going to be 100%, this 6th grade class. We're going to be 100% on this, 100%, nothing less than perfection, right? Always perfection. So we had this kid in our class who was a great big kid. I mean, he was a complete jerk. He had these tiny little shoulders, like little tiny shoulders, little pea-sized head, big, huge, enormous body with enormous butt. I mean, the biggest butt you ever saw. He was shaped just like an avocado or a boiled egg. He's just this big old thing. And he wore white shirts, and he wore high-water jeans and he had these shoes with lightning bolts on the sides. We called him Flash, which was a derisive term, of course, but he took pride in it. He was so dumb, So he says, I'm not bringing in my money. And I said, if you don't bring in your money tomorrow, Flash, I'm going to meet you after school, and I'm going to beat you up. Now, he weighed like 600 pounds. I don't know what he was. He's big. And I weighed 56 pounds. I will never forget that weight. My teacher always said, great things come in small packages. And I was so proud, like Clancy did, like this. Great things come in small packages. But I was 56 pounds, and I was 11 years old. He didn't bring in his money. I waited for him. I was in the bushes outside Randolph Elementary School. And he passed by me, and I jumped out of the bushes on his back, and I took my fist, and I just crammed it like that right up into his nose, hit him right here. I felt the cartilage, like, I didn't know it was cartilage, but I felt something give. And then he bled, as I'm riding him to the ground. He bled on my hand. And it was wonderful. It was just wonderful. It was this feeling it was the most power I had felt in forever. I just loved it. And I got in a lot of trouble. I mean, my dad was an officer, and his dad was a sergeant. And you don't do that. I mean, you don't do that. I spent 3 weeks in my bedroom after school listening to airplanes take off and land, because we lived on an Air Force base, and I was confined. I cut off all my sister's hair one time because I didn't think she was supposed to have hair. She was bald till she was 3. Me and Snooky Camel cut it all off. Spent more time in there for that. Years later, I, of course, long since have made amends to my sister, but every time I go to Texas, I always talk about Flash, because he was on my amends list. When I got sober and made my amends, he was on my amends list. And I said when I put him on there, I said, this is what I did. I hit him, and I shouldn't have done that. I was wrong to do that, and he had a right not to bring in his money, and blah, blah, blah. And I said, but, and I said, I was willing. I'm still willing to say that. But I've never been sorry. I know I'm wrong, but I've never been sorry, because secretly it was wonderful. It was just wonderful. But I don't have to be sorry, because only I know if I'm sorry. I just have to, because it was wrong. But it was fun still. So, but that was the kind of kid I was. I was skinny, I was belligerent, I was afraid, I was angry, I felt sorry for myself, I was sensitive, I was always in love or in lust, but I could never say that. I could never express it because that was too gushy. I gave the appearance of self-sufficiency, and I was totally self-absorbed. And I was so frightened to give my heart to anyone, even my parents, from the get-go. And that's alcoholism. I've asked myself that many, many times. Maybe it's a lot of other things. But in my case, it's alcoholism. That brings me to this point. I don't know all the ingredients to alcoholism. I just know that that's what I am. Of and by myself, without Alcoholics Anonymous, I'm a depressive. Of and by myself, without AA, I'm angry. Of and by myself, without AA, I'm selfish. So selfish that I'm like in this plexiglass box. I am that selfish. I'm like my own little biosphere. And you know what happens to that if you don't get fresh air in there? You die. And I'm like that. I'm so selfish without AA. Of and by myself, I have no God. I have no power. I have a brain. And that's it. I have a brain. I'm so frightened, I won't give my heart. I won't. I'll theorize, I'll intellectualize, I'll rationalize, I'll justify, but I'll never give because I'm afraid. I have been that way from the time I was tiny. I'm like a little bitty tank driver. I'm in this little bitty tank, and I've got this little bitty slit that looks out. It's just little bitty that can just see the victims, I can just see them out this little bitty slit. And I have like little tiny treads that just like roll over the victims. And I have this little tiny gun that goes at the people. It's just, I'm so afraid because here I am, this little bitty, soft, little amoeba-like creature inside this little tiny tank. And I spent 25 years in this little tiny tank, shooting at people, rolling over people. Sometimes they would rise up, and then I would be toast because my tank would just fall off of them, and I would have to go in another direction. But I always stayed in the tank. And it wasn't until I didn't have any better ideas, until I had been surrendered to Alcoholics Anonymous, till I didn't have any more choices, that I just raised my little cover there and I stuck my head out of that tank. And I go, help, help. I didn't even go, help. I went, just help. Just like a little, because I was so terrified. And I guess that's, for me, that's alcoholism. And I don't know why I'm that way. Like Clancy said, people want to know, why does this work? I don't know why it works. I just know that if I do everything opposite to what I think I should do, I'm fine. I'm successful. I'm happy. I have good relationships. I don't take hostages. I don't shoot people. I I don't stomp on waitresses, nobody can tell that I'm a quart low. They think I'm just an ordinary human being, unless they ask. And then I might say a few things that... Have you ever noticed how when people ask you, ordinary people ask you how you are, they really don't want to know. They don't want to know, like if they say, how are you? Well, I'm resentful today. I have this deep-seated resentment which is causing me heartburn, and I don't want to give it up because that would take leveling of my pride, and I don't want to do it. And while you're saying this, they're like... Which is the other reason we come to AA. Because we come into AA, we go to a meeting or whatever, and they have somebody say, how you doing? Well, I'm resentful today. And if they've been sober longer than you, what they usually say is, oh, well, let's get into the solution. Let's pray. Let's do something. What I always assign the people that I sponsor to do when they have a resentment, because I've had to do it, and if I have to do it, you have to do it. That's just too bad, because it does roll downhill, and so if it goes clear down to the bottom, that's recovery. I always say, do something nice for the person that you resent. Oh, man. What? Now, let me give you this. I give you one of my stories, my kitchen table stories, if you will. I was sponsoring these, I still sponsor one of them. I was sponsoring these sisters. And their mother was a bad alcoholic. And I had 12-stepped this woman. And she had stayed sober for 3 months, sometimes 6 months. This was over a period of several years. And she drank on the way back from some trip from Montana, and she just didn't come back. She just kept drinking. And she was a bad alcoholic. She was an artist. She was a tortured person. She was just a tortured person. And kept drinking. There was no father. The father had split years before. And so I was sponsoring her daughters, and in some cases, because she was absent because of her alcoholism, sometimes they would come to me with things that they should have gone to their mother about. But I would try to supply the answer as a mother, because I am a mother myself. And she got sick, and she was upset with me, she was angry with me, and she was saying bad things about me to her daughters. I understood this from a clinical standpoint, but I got ticked off. And I started resenting her. And that resentment feeling where it grinds, it's just like, it's like massive heartburn when it's grinding sensation of this resentment. And so I went to my sponsor with it, and she said, okay, why don't you do something anonymous for her every week, something nice, anonymous for her, and it'll make you feel better. So I thought, what can I do that she won't know about? Because if I had done something directly, she would have known it was me. Then it would have made it worse, because she would have gotten more upset about the whole thing. So I started sending her flowers on a weekly basis, just a little anonymous bouquet of flowers. And I was doing that for weeks and weeks, and every time I would write out the check, I would feel a little bit better. I would continue to write out the check, and she would continue to say bad things, and I would continue to hear about it in a roundabout way, but it was getting easier. It was, I was breathing easier, and it was, Then she got sick, and she had cancer of the throat, and it was very large because, of course, she didn't take care of herself. She didn't go to the doctor, so it was very large when they found it. And within a very short period of time, she was bedridden. She couldn't talk. It was the chemo, the radiation, the horrible indignities of cancer. And I just kept sending the flowers. And by the time she died, I was free. I was free. And at her funeral, she had written the service herself. And all through the service, it was, I could hear, her paintings were at the front of the church, and they were tortured paintings. Paintings of people like, and dark and anxiety-ridden. And in her service, what I heard was, forgive me, forgive me, forgive me, over and over. And I already had. And after the service was over, we all went outside. And she was 53 years old. And 53 of us were given balloons. And it was an absolutely gorgeous day in Nebraska. It was about 10 degrees. And, well, that's good. And it was a blue sky, and there had been frost. A fog had come in overnight, and there was frost on the trees, and it had frozen. You know how it looks? And every little twig and branch was covered with this frost. And the sun was shining, and that frost was glittering. And we all took a balloon outside, and with a prayer, we let her go. And those balloons rose up, and they blew out across the Missouri River, and it was a gorgeous sight. And what I got to experience was, way to go, Sally. You're free. And I was too. I mean, it was something. And I didn't want to do that. A bunch of lousy little flowers. And it set me free. Now, how many times have we experienced stuff like that and been prisoners of ourselves and a lousy little bunch of flowers was the key? But I would have never done that without a sponsor. I would have never sent her those dumb flowers. I would have never done those things because, see, I don't do stuff like that by myself. I don't do it. I don't do it. And but I did it, and it set me free, and it set her free. You know, I'll tell you, I make my own prison. I build that baby from the foundation up. And a couple of years ago, I had a king-size resentment, I'll tell you, a king-size one. So, you know, I'm human. I'm not immune. I'm going to have these things till I die, because I'm a person of passions. And when I feel like I get screwed, I resent it. And I had this huge resentment. But you know what it started with? And I talked to my sponsor about it. And, you know, she gave me some direction. And what she said was, whenever that person's name is mentioned, say something nice. Ugh. But and believe me, the sentences were short when I first started out. They were very short. I couldn't even say her name without having a feeling of grind. And so I started doing that, and I started saying nice things, and the more I did it, the easier it got. I was free. And I've been free. I didn't get sober to live a life in the prison I construct myself. I have every single tool that you've given me through Alcoholics Anonymous and through the God of My Understanding has given me every single tool I need to be a person of grace and dignity. And when I choose to hang on to a resentment, when I choose to exercise my negative character defects, it is almost to me like saying to God, It's like saying, you don't know what you've done here. Thank you. I can figure this one out myself. And I don't want to live like that. I lived that way for 25 years. I don't want to live that way until I die like that. I may indeed be middle-aged. I may also be very old. And I don't know. But I know that Alcoholics Anonymous has given me what I've got today. And it's given me everything. And it's given me the opportunity to be a better me every day. You know, the best I am is when I'm pitching AA to somebody else. That's my best. When I can rivet those babies, I'll tell you, there's nothing like a newcomer. They give me, I pump that serotonin into my system like you wouldn't believe when I'm pitching AA. You know, first of all, they're like a fly on a blotter. I mean, you got a little pin, you go like this, and they're stuck. I mean, they not flap their wings like this, but they're stuck there. Last night, I tell you, that lady who's been sober 42 years, she had old Connie back there, and she was going, I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I said to somebody in the front row, she's got her finger out, you know. I just love it, you know, and there is nothing like it. There is nothing like the experience of one alcoholic talking to another alcoholic, eyeball to eyeball. We had a guy, and, you know, because a lot of the treatment centers have gone out of business, we are in for a really exciting time in AA. Truly, because we're getting them, and they're wet. You know, they're like nasty, and they're like really bad off, you know, and of course oh, he's so bad off. And we had this kid at our meeting like about 6 or 8 weeks ago named Brian. And Brian's a bad alcoholic. He's about 25 years old. He's a bad alcoholic. He's been out back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And he's sitting, and Casey Hoffman has these pigeons that sit in the front, and they all are lined up like a little bunch of birds on a wire. And they're like, he's here, and then these little pigeons are lined up here. And he has got the worst. I mean, he's the worst pigeons. Not good pigeons, but bad alcoholics. And it's like almost like example row. You know, you can kind of look at them because everybody else is facing the other direction. So here's Brian, and he has come in. He is like shaken so bad. He is like, as a matter of fact, right after the meeting, he had a massive convulsion. They had to put him in the hospital. So he is like really close to a convulsion. And he's sitting there like this, you know. And I mean, I was fascinated. I mean, I wanted to snuggle up right next to him, you know, go, oh, Brian, it's wonderful, you know. Just like this, and I said, Brian, you better eat some chocolate. So I was running around grabbing up every bit of chocolate I could find in the room. I mean, I had a whole big old thing full of chocolate. And I'm shoving this chocolate at him like this, and he's going... And all through the meeting, he had like chocolate all around his face like this, and he was eating his chocolate. There's a guy there from Minneapolis who comes to the meeting when he's in town, and he was sitting there at the table facing the example row, and he's looking at this Brian, just in awe. Everyone was like in awe. And he said later, he came back 6 weeks later, and he said to Casey, where is Brian? Did he make it? And Casey turned and said, he's right there. Didn't even recognize him because he was better. And, he's like a diamond. I mean, I want him to stay so bad. And I know that it isn't always that way. He is not guaranteed anything. None of us are guaranteed safe delivery. But by golly, for a minute, when I was shoving that chocolate at him, I was thinking of what a wonderful deal this is. And as Clancy was talking about last night, I had so much gratitude for having been saved by the God of my understanding, whom I didn't even recognize. I'll tell you, when I got to AA, I was 25, I had no God. Had none. And eventually, I became aware of this power. And at first, I was very much like the Native Americans. I believed that there was a life force, and I even wrote this stupid poem and sent it to the Grapevine. Thank God they don't accept poetry. Which was very bad. I mean, I'm not a writer. I'm an artist. I'm not a writer. And it was all about these, like, gas lights along the way. It was really pretty pathetic. But I believed in a native force. I still believe in a power, a native power, a power in the leaves and in the grass and in the animals and in the birds. I really believe that. But I understand that there's someone in the audience today who was caught in the act. Praying on her knees. And I remember exactly how it felt, because I was in the bathroom praying on my knees, and one of the people I sponsored just happened to need to go to the bathroom, and they came and opened the door, and here I was. What are you doing? Oh, praying. I was embarrassed. But it was, of course, it was the last thing I wanted to do. And, of course, it was the best thing I could have done. Because that position of subservience is something that this arrogant alcoholic has to do once in a while to get over the pride, to understand that of and by myself, I'm not only am I not on my knees, I am down the drain. And I forget that sometimes. Anyway, I'm running out of time. I got sober. I got a sponsor. I went to meetings. I met Mary Dick. I took the steps. I've had so much fun with him because he's this very conservative sort. And I remember getting him a tie last Christmas. Normally he wears Eddie Bauer shirts and Land's End shirts and LL Bean shirts, and I took a flyer last Christmas. I got him a tie. He usually wears those regimental stripe type ties, and possibly a muted, tiny floral, tiny little thing. I got him a tie that had stripes going like this across this way, and it was almost too much. Because he's that conservative. But that's only an appearance. When we were married, we had absolutely no money. And do you remember how difficult it was for you to laugh when you first came to AA? I'm sure, Clancy talked about last weekend at my anniversary, but he talked about a group called the Omaha It's Not My Fault group. It ticked off some people from the Omaha It's Not My Fault group, of course, but who cares? Because it'll motivate them into action, won't it? I mean, whether it doesn't matter. But at any rate, we didn't have any money, and but I hadn't laughed. I mean, I had not laughed. I had been sitting in meetings, and I remember the first time I laughed. We had a woman come. Her name was Evelyn, and she made a talk at my home group, which was the friendship group. And she said, I remember exactly, tall, beautiful black woman, and she said, "My name's Evelyn, and I'm from Philadelphia, which is the city of brotherly love. And when I was in Philadelphia, I was some kind of loving them brothers." And I did exactly that. But, when this was my position. I had my arms crossed, my legs crossed, tight, like this. And toes so tight that, and I was still was getting rid of the alcoholic poisoning. And I had this leg, and when it would be get too tight like that, then it would involuntarily lash out, go like that, or my arm would go like this. And I was sitting there, and she said that, and I just laughed. I just laughed. Big belly laugh. Ho, 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 like that. And I was startled because I didn't realize it was coming from me. It's like, who's this? I laughed. And, there was an old guy in our group who used to tell this story about a guy that was so spiritual. He was just the big spiritual guru. And he would sit by the door, and everyone would come through, and they'd say, "How are you, Pete?" And he'd say, "I'm very happy. I'm very happy." And they, so finally this young thing bops into the meeting and goes, "How you doing, Pete?" He said, "Oh, I'm very happy." She said, "Why don't you tell your face?" Now, haven't you sat in meetings where people have said how grateful they are and how wonderful their life is and everything, and they're like, they should pose for that dog in the Hush Puppy ad. And then they have the nerve to say, "If you want what I have," and are willing to go to, "I don't want what you have! You look like a sad ass, for heaven's sake! What do I want that for? I've been that way for like 20 years. I don't want to be like that now. I'm happy, joyous, and free. What are you?" So I think it's our responsibility to look like we are having a good time, whether we're having a good time or not. Because if we act like we're having a good time, if you raise your mouth a little, and do like, even if it's, when I first started laughing, those muscles were not used to it. It almost like went into rictus, and I laughed. But the more I did it, the better I felt, the more, and I honestly believe that a good belly laugh is like having some kind of cosmic zipper on you. And you just when you laugh, it's like, and God comes down and goes and cleans you up on the inside, because if you're laughing, can you feel anything else? Can you feel sorry for yourself? Like this, sort of, ha, ha, ha. Wait a minute, I'm sorry for that. You can't. It's impossible. And laughter to me, it's not silly. It's God's music. This is His music. The words we supply, but the music is His, and the laughter is the music. And I think sometimes, like He flies over Beirut and all these places that are in terrible shape, and He goes, boy, this is depressing. I gave them free will, and look at this. I think I'll go to an AA meeting. They're happy there. They sure, and I don't think He wants to see people, I'm so happy, look at this guy. That's that old plug in the jug. I'm not. I am. I'm being judgmental. As Clancy said, I'm reporting. But that's not how I can be. Really, they can be what they want to be. But it's not how I am. And I need to be where the action is. I need to laugh. I need to be active. Because I have a lot of fast twitch fiber in me, and I need to be on the move. And when I'm on the move, I'm in good shape. When I sit around, I think about suicide or homicide. And actually, I don't think about suicide. I think about killing people. I think about killing whoever it is that I have to be binge thinking about that particular day. I'll never be well. That's why I have to go to meetings. I go to 4 meetings a week on a regular basis, usually more than that. I talk to my sponsor once a week. I sponsor people. I go through the steps with them. I, talk to them on the phone. I take elected service positions in my group. or non-elected positions in my group. I pick up my cup, somebody else's. I put my chair away, somebody else's chair. I clean up the women's bathroom. I clean off the literature table. I wipe down the counters. I just got through doing a year of cleanup at the Foxhall group on Tuesday night, which is 450, 500 people, and they are messy. And I'm cleaning tables, till 10 o'clock at night, and then I go home and I feel better because that's my group. I have cleaned the tables at my group, and I am not too big to have to do that. I'm not too big to take those kind of deals. Now, I'm going to tell you a couple stories, and I'm out of here. Because I know everybody wants, it's so funny, after conferences, we're all so full. We're full of coffee. We're full of the spirit. And then we have to go home and go to work, and it's very depressing, So everybody, grabs their suitcases, and with 15 minutes, it's like, it's just like a bunch of cockroaches or something when you turn on the lights. Gone. One of the areas that I have, the thing that if you would have said to me, what would you want when you came to AA? I would have said a lot of things, but I would have never really said a relationship with a power greater than myself. And our challenge, I believe, is to recognize this power greater than ourselves in what he gives us to recognize him in. Because I think he's everywhere. He's just everywhere. It's like fish swimming in the sea, and the sea is God. And unless you know that the sea is God, you just swimming in the water. You don't even know what it is. It doesn't even occur to you. It is a natural environment. For me, I need to recognize those messages that are sent to me, not through the spoken word, but through events. And one of the events that occurred that is a perfect example of that is that I hate flying. Actually, I don't hate flying. I hate the thought of crashing and burning. That's what I hate the thought of. I hate the thought between the time they start to crash and the time we hit the ground. That's what I hate. And Russ reminded me, who is a wonderful flight person that spent years in the air, hundreds of hours in the air and so forth, thousands of hours. He said, there is no memory after death. Oh. So if I die, I won't remember I'm scared. No, that's good. But I still want to do it. So I'm in this plane, little bitty, cigar-shaped plane, no bigger than a dragonfly, just nothing. I'm on my way to Little Rock, Arkansas. Weather's terrible. It's snowing. It's thunder snow, lightning, big thunderstorms, and snow. We try to land in Fayetteville. The pilot looks like he's like a glue head or something. I mean, and there's this raggedy little curtain, and we're going along, and it is so rough. It is just, and we try to land in Fayetteville. The runway's iced over. We go back up in the air. The stall alarm goes off. Oh, God. And I'm praying like Red Fox, Red Fox. I got my medallion. I'm going, oh, God, I'll never swear from the podium again. I was sincere. And I'll cook dinner for Dick every night. I promise you I will. I'll be such a good sponsor. I won't tell him to take off forever. And I hear a rustling behind me. I mean, I'm sweating. I am so scared I'm sweating. I hear a rustling behind me. I turn around. There's a woman. She's got a brown paper bag. Out of the brown paper bag, she pulls a bottle of Smirnoff vodka. She takes the lid off, takes a big slug, and I felt better. The power greater than I call God sent me that woman because I just felt great. But I could have felt sorry for myself. I could have been mad. I could have been a lot of things. But I felt great because I recognized that he was saying, I'll take care of you. You're okay. You're all right. I'm in San Jose. I'm scared. They got like 5,000 people registered. I got to talk. That night, 10,000 eyeballs looking at me. I'm from Nebraska. What am I going to do? I mean, I'm like, you know how your brain deserts you when you get, like, self-centered? It just goes. It says, bye-bye, and takes the exit, and I'm thinking, oh, my God, what am I going to do? And, I mean, I'm just, my thoughts are banging against each other. You'll get up on the stage and you won't be able to say anything, and they won't give you your money for your airline, and you'll have to walk back to Nebraska. And what are you going to say when you get up there? What kind of spiritual message do you have? You're going to say, "Go Big Red." You know, what are you going to do? Back and forth. And I'm sitting out there watching this play called Sadie the Souse, where they sing and dance and leap around. And it was out in an amphitheater outside in San Jose in this town center. There's palm trees and everything. And this friend was sitting next to me. And I'm listening to this, but I'm humming. You know, I'm not in the moment. I am somewhere else. I'm 2 hours ahead. All of a sudden, I feel something wet hit my hand. And I looked up. I thought it was raining. I looked down. It's white. And my friend sitting next to me goes, "Oh, a bird has crapped on your back." And it was this big. This was just the fallout. It was this big around. It was a seagull. And I mean, they eat fish. And this thing, or worms and stuff. I don't know what they eat. It was bad. And all of a sudden, it was just like, all right. God sent me a bird. For some people, they sing. For me, they crap. Just go tell them that. And everything was fine. Because I'm just a broad from Nebraska. I'm in AA. I got a message to send. If they want to hear it, fine. If they don't, they can look at my bird crap. Oh, who cares? So I didn't even wash my dress. I had on my beautiful yellow silk speaking dress, and I just brushed those bits out of it and went with a big blob on my back. And it was like, what do you call those things when people have things? Stigmata. It was like a stigmata. I had this bird crap, and that's all they wanted to see anyway. Say, "Where's your bird crap?" Here it is. See what we have to put up with when we speak? God sent me that bird. And see, he's all around. He's everywhere. We just have to recognize him. And in order for me to recognize those sorts of gifts, I have to be in fit spiritual condition. And the way I stay in fit spiritual condition is to go to meetings and sponsor people and talk to my sponsor and pray on a regular basis, do a little bit of meditation, do a little bit of reading, sit still and be still. Because that's the way I can know that there is a God, is to be still. And that's real hard. Because I can only be still for a short period of time. But what it does is it stops my mind. And I can do that, and then I can recognize those gifts that God has given me. And one of those gifts was a fox. Oh, this was such an experience. And it only took a few seconds. But it was worth it. When we lived at our other house, we fed foxes. We walk every day. We would take our dogs for a walk. We'd walk every day. And it was our time. We could be mad at each other or be happy with each other or talk to each other or not talk to each other. We'd just walk together with the dogs, and it was a moment to commune. I always fed fox. I love to feed these fox. I feed everything. I feed rabbits and squirrels and raccoons and rats, and I feed all kinds of stuff. And so I would take leftover dog food and leftover Chinese food and stuff down to these foxes, and I would dump it out on the ground at the end of this park where they would come up. There was a den below, and I would say the same thing every time. "Here's your breakfast, foxies." And then we would turn and we would go back, and about halfway back through the parking lot, they would come up, and we could watch them. Dick got me a little pair of binoculars for Christmas, and I could watch them eat. And we saw them with their babies. They had babies in the springtime, the little kits. And, it was just a spiritual thing. It was a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing to watch animals because they give love in a way that I cannot. They give it unconditionally. And it's really a goal for me to aspire to, because they really do love unconditionally. Anyway, this day Dick was gone, and I was walking. It was really cold. It was like 40 below, and I had on my down coat, and Cuckoo was all wrapped up in her little pink coat, and Charlie was there, and I was walking them along, and I dumped out the food. Now, all of my life, I told you about my heart, how I didn't want anybody in my heart. I didn't want anybody near me because I was so afraid that they would hurt me. And AA has allowed me to open my heart, just like a painting by George O'Keeffe, and give it almost unconditionally to people and not be afraid. And so I'm able to feel. When I guarded my heart, I was unable to feel anything. But when I opened it, I was able to feel. So I dumped out the food, and I turned around to go. And I felt something. It was an intuition, if you will. I felt physically something. And I looked back over my shoulder, and as close to me as this girl is in the front row sat the fox. And as I watched, he slowly, one foot at a time, lay down in front of me. Never took his eyes off of me. It only took a few seconds, but I believe that he was saying what I am saying to you today. Thank you for the food. Thank you for the thought. Thank you for sometimes saving my life. And if I believe that fox was saying it to me, he was. And I believe that God sent me that fox as he sent me to you. And I thank you.